and welcome to this Dot Connector videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Well, of great interest to me this week has been the reports in national newspapers in Britain about the investigation into the paedophile activities of the former British Prime Minister Edward Heath. Interesting to me because I named him as a paedophile and as a child sacrificing Satanist 20 years ago. And interestingly, among the reports this week is one that a group of women are claiming that their parents ran a paedophile ring which sacrificed children, and that Edward Heath was connected to it. Of course, when you see these reports and the people that write them, what surrounds them is incredulity, bizarre, fantasy, and such descriptions are everywhere when these things come out. But when you've been investigating this for a long time, in my case from the mid-1990s, then these things become commonplace in the sense of the number of times that you've heard them. And what these women are reported to be claiming about Ted Heath, that her parents were running a paedophile ring that was sacrificing children in satanic rituals in southern England, is a description that I've heard over and over and over again, with many and various famous names involved, not just in Britain, but all over the world. And another thing that happened this week, which will seem to be in no way connected, is this story about NASA scientists finding a solar system with planets, Earth-like planets, where there could be extraterrestrial life. It doesn't seem to be in any way connected to the theme of what I'm saying this week, but I'll come to that later. In a way, it is. The stories about former Prime Minister Ted Heath in the papers this week relate to what is claimed to be a leak from inside the investigation into Heath by Wiltshire Police, which claims that the Chief Constable of Wiltshire, Mike Veal, has said that the evidence against Heath given by witnesses who've come forward is 120% true, he believes. And when police forces are faced with these stories, especially when they relate to satanic ritual and the sacrifice of children, they can seem absolutely as fantastic as anyone else would see them, because it's not what we're told happens in the world. It's not the explanation of human society that we get as a matter of course from cradle to grave. But if you listen to the witnesses with an open mind, not a mind that's open to believing for believing's sake either, that's the other polarity, but an open mind that just looks at the evidence, you see, and these reports appear to be indicating this about the Wiltshire Police inquiry, you see that the common themes, the common descriptions, down to things like common nicknames or code names for people, are the same. And it's extremely compelling when the people involved have no connection to each other. I mean, in my case, when you are talking to people, describing rituals and what's done and how it all works in Britain, and people in the United States are describing the same rituals in the same way, and people in Australia the same, then you must have an amazing aversion to seeking the truth if you just wave some such things away on the basis that they are fantastic compared with your perception of normal. And um, it's this squeezing of people's perception of normal, which um, is the greatest defense mechanism of all this, because the chasm between perceived normal and what's actually going on is so almost indescribably immense that people can't bridge it. So the hand waves nonsense by reflex action. For example, one of the things that the media reports found so, quote, bizarre, so unbelievable, is that these women are apparently claiming that this satanic paedophile cult, which they connect to their parents and to Heath, had ritually murdered at least 16 children. And of course, it's like 16 murders. That's amazing. How could that happen? Well, having researched this and looked people in the eye all over the world who are describing their experience, having looked at the scale of children that go missing every year worldwide, it is fantastic. Then 16 children is an almost infinitesimal fraction of the children that are ritually sacrificed worldwide every year. And when you look at this figure of children going missing, it's mind-blowing. I mean, I tried to get the figure in America many years ago. I rang the federal government and I was told they didn't keep the figures. They could tell me how many cars went missing, not children. So they said, you'll have to ring every state and ask them. And I started. And I hadn't got through many before the figure was in thousands and thousands and thousands that went missing every year, only in America, never mind worldwide. And of course, there will be explanations for many, and there will be non-satanic pedophilia explanations for many. But a significant number of these children end up in pedophile rings, child trafficking rings, and in ritual sacrifice in the satanic rings. And the people involved in this pedophilia satanic network, because the two are fundamentally connected if you get to the core, are some of the most famous people in the world. Not him, not her. Yeah, because the world is so unbelievably different in what really happens to that people perceive is happening. So when you uncover how the world is controlled, it's like a spider's web. There's a spider at the center. That's where the whole agenda is coming from. And then you go out from the spider. Close to the spider, you've got the strands in the web that are the most exclusive secret societies. And then you get secret societies that we know about. And eventually you are coming into the public arena, where you have government agencies and corporations and the banking system and all the rest. And it appears at that level, what people see, that it's all being decided by the people that you see. But it's not. It's ultimately being decided by this force at the center of the web, which is deep in the hidden and out of human sight. And the web itself is held together by a hierarchy which at its core, not the vast majority in it, at various levels of clueless about how it all works and what's happening, but at its core, that hierarchy is based on Satanism, and it's also based on pedophilia. And people will remember, of course, that in history, the ancients used to sacrifice children to the gods, and this was described in terms of sacrificing, for instance, young virgins to the gods. Well, young virgins is just code for children. So we have a situation where it's widely accepted that ancient societies all over the world sacrificed people and sacrificed children to the perceived gods. What is not realized is that never stopped. What happened is that when it became publicly unacceptable to do that, it went from being done openly to being done secretly. And it has continued to go on ever since. And because this satanic pedophile ring at its core, I keep emphasizing, is controlled and driven by those that drive this web of global manipulation, this is why it's the often very rich and very famous that are named by people who have been subjected to those horrors of pedophilia and Satanism by this, what is a death cult. And so when you look at ancient Babylon and all these ancient societies, look at what they did openly and remember that they're still doing it secretly. And you look at religion. Religion, take Christianity, that came out of Babylon. Went to Rome, became Christianity. And a lot of the satanic rituals are still encoded in what the religions do. I mean, instead of literally sacrificing someone and drinking their blood, which is what goes on, horrific as it is, in these satanic cults, satanic cult, if you go deep enough. Instead of that, you have symbolically drinking the blood as wine and eating the flesh as bread or a biscuit. And of course, what we still have in churches is the altar. There we go, we're doing the ritual at the altar. Well, that's just a Satanism light version of what really goes on altars and went on openly in the past. And you look at the very symbol of Christianity. It's a man being sacrificed, a sacrificial ritual on the cross. That's what you're looking at as the very symbol of the religion. And this is because the origins of today's Satanism and the origins of today's religions, in many cases, is the same source. Ancient Babylon and elsewhere. So this is some of the background to why claims about Edward Heath are not as bizarre and fantastic as they're perceived to be. It's just that they're bizarre from the myopia that people have, including most journalists, of what is actually going on in the world. I came across a document years ago now. I published it in full in a book called Human Race Get Off Your Knees a few years ago. And it claimed to be from a Satanist who was in his dying days and wanted to explain how Satanism ran the world. And it wasn't a deathbed confession. It was actually quite arrogant, saying, this is how it is. We run the world. And of course, I cannot say 100% that this document is genuine. What I can say, after well in excess of 2 decades researching these subjects, that whoever wrote it had a very deep and detailed knowledge of Satanism. And this is part of what this Australian Satanist says in the document. Politicians are introduced by a carefully graded set of criteria and situations that enable them to accept that their victims will be, quote, our little secret. Young children sexually molested and physically abused by politicians worldwide are quickly used as sacrifices. In Australia, the bodies are hardly ever discovered, for Australia is still a wilderness. And in the more populated countries, one of the ways they dispose of the bodies is through private crematoria owned by members of the cult. And our little secret. Look at the scale of potential for blackmailing politicians and others in positions of influence once you pull them into this arena, and it becomes our little secret of the hidden hand, which then can impose its will in laws, changes in society, direction of the world upon the politicians and others who are stuck with being blackmailed because of our little secret. So why this sacrifice obsession? Why this pedophilia obsession? Why are they so connected? Well, let's go back to this story about these planets briefly. This is the NASA announcement this week. Is this newly discovered solar system proof we are not alone? For centuries, it says, it has been one of the most vexing mysteries for mankind. Are we, the 7 billion inhabitants of this wondrous blue planet, really alone, or is there life somewhere out there in the universe? Yesterday, we came a step closer to answering that tantalizing question with the landmark announcement by NASA scientists of the discovery of a new solar system that has at least 3 Earth-like planets with climates that might just support life. The kind of planets, it says, that a certain ET might have called home. The discovery by an international team using advanced telescopes in space at far-flung locations around the world has caused a frenzy of excitement among astronomers who, as a breed, are not given to hyperbole. However, it is being described as the holy grail for researchers, and this solar system with the Earth-like planets is 39 light years away, which is 234 trillion miles. Now, the reason I raise that story in relation to what is claimed about Heath and what I'm talking about in terms of Satanism, sacrificing to the gods, ancient and modern, is because this myopia of perception of the possible relates to this as well. When they're looking for life other than human, they are searching for planets that are Earth-like, as if the environmental, atmospheric makeup of Earth is the only place that life can exist. Life exists on this planet, in this reality, because the makeup of the body relates and syncs with the makeup atmospherically of the planet, in a very small area too. But that's not the only possible relationship of forms of life with an atmospheric state. Life can exist in other atmospheres, other environments, if it is itself, as with the human body in this environment, in sync with it and given sustenance by it, if you like. So the idea that only Earth-like planets can produce life is extraordinary, to me anyway, in its perceptual limitation. But I'll go further. They're also searching for life within the frequency band of human sight or human technological perception, if you like. And as I've said many times, according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is our reality basically, is estimated to be 0.005% of what exists in this, quote, universe. Visible light, the only frequency band that we can see and perceive as a visual reality, is a fraction of that 0.005%. In other words, the almost entirety of existence we cannot see because it's beyond our frequency band, the one that we can perceive. Are we really saying that in that almost entirety of existence. In effect, no life exists. Of course, by any common sense, the vastness of potential life exists not in this tiny frequency band that we can perceive, but in the entirety of existence beyond it. But they don't look there. They don't question there. They just, oh no, can we see it? Is it an Earth-like planet? And therefore, just as we live in a frequency band of perception, so others outside of our frequency band of perception live in theirs. Which brings me back to the gods that these crazies are worshipping and performing their sacrifices to. There are entities just outside the human perception band that have been manipulating human society for, at least in our perception of time, thousands of years. And they are far more energetic, ethereal in their base form than humans appear to be. Though there's a whole new story, a whole story about that, which I've talked about in other videocasts and at great detail in the books. And these entities feed off energy, radiation they feed off. And they feed off a frequency of energy that matches theirs. Because, like two radio stations, you've got to be on the same frequency or you can't absorb the energy. And the frequency that they can absorb relates to the frequency of low vibrational human emotion, all based around the emotion of fear. Fear, terror, anxiety, depression, all these low vibrational emotions produce energy that they can absorb. So it is in their interests to manipulate this world, to have humans producing as much of that low vibrational emotional energy as possible, because that is their power source, that is their sustenance that they're feeding off. So we talk about satanic rituals of, if you like, individual victims. But take this in a wider sense, and world wars become satanic rituals collectively. What has gone on in Syria, in Libya, still going on, is a satanic ritual in the sense of producing the very energy that these entities feed off. And the energy that they want most of all, that which they desire more than any other, is the energy given off by prepubescent children. We see puberty as a hormonal change, a chemical change. But the hormonal chemical change is an expression of an energetic change that goes on at a deeper level. And they want the energy of children before that energetic change takes place. And so it's been children that have been the focus of so much sacrificed to the gods, ancient and today. And what is happening with pedophilia is that these people are um, possessed by these entities, these demonic entities, if you like. Possessed, taken over, their thoughts, their actions, their perceptual states taken over by these entities. Possession is as old as history in terms of the theme. And so when the pedophile or the Satanist is abusing the child, the possessing entity is drawing off that child's energy in a form of well, being a vampire, in terms of vampiring the energy of the child. And this brings me back to a story that I experienced with Ted Heath before I realized what he was. I was invited, when I was a national spokesman for the Green Party, I was invited when we had a very big vote, the biggest the Green Party's ever had, at the European elections of 1989. I was invited to go onto a television news program to comment on the results as they came in live, because it was clear the Green Party were going to do very well. And I arrived, say 1989, still working for the BBC at that time, not into any of this. And I was met at reception by this lady who took me into the makeup room. And as I walked into the makeup room, the door here was open to the right. And there appeared to be no one in there. So the lady said to me, there'll be someone along in a minute to, sort you out. So I sat down at this chair looking at these. It's a mirror, the row of mirrors like you have in makeup rooms in TV shows. And then something caught my eye to the right. And I looked to the right, and there, behind the door, that's why I couldn't see him, was Ted Heath, who'd just been interviewed on the program and was waiting to have the makeup taken off. So I looked across and, hello, mate, nice to meet you. And he never said a word, and never said a word in this entire experience. And he turned to look at me. And he had this very strange, almost inquisitive look on his face, looking me over. And then his eyes started at the top of my head and then went slowly down to my feet and then went all the way back again, slowly. And I'm looking at this guy. What's going on? All I can say, it was like being scanned. But the biggest thing was that while this was going on, Heath's eyes went completely black, including the whites, completely black. And you look at someone and you have eye contact. There's a point of contact. As I looked into these black eyes, it was like looking through Heath into something else. I described it later as like looking into two black holes. And after he's finished this, quote, scan, he then turns, looks back at the mirror. Very soon afterwards, the lady came in and started the makeup. And of course, at the time, I had no clue what had just happened. And I didn't say anything about it for a while, because I thought, did what I think I experienced there actually happen? Because it was so fantastic. And then I started coming across this theme all over the world of the black-eyed people. And I was starting to read these descriptions of different people's experiences in different countries of exactly what I experienced with Heath. Absolutely exactly. Where the eyes turn black completely. And what I realized later, as I began to understand how all this works that I've been describing today, I realized that I actually was looking through Heath into something else, into that level that possesses these people, because they're just vehicles for this force in the hidden, in the humans can't see. And when, therefore, um, when you look at this and look at what people claim in terms of satanic ritual, without knowing this background, it can all seem so bizarre and it's just bewildering, unfathomable. But when you put the dots together, it all starts to make sense of what's actually going on. And this cult, this satanic cult, has infiltrated the police, it's infiltrated the judiciary, it's infiltrated social services, which is why more and more children are being taken by social services worldwide, not least in Britain and America, from loving parents for spurious reasons. It's all connected. And this is why so many police, in relation to the aftermath of the revelations about the record-breaking paedophile and Satanist, by the way, Jimmy Savile, have described how when they got close to famous people within these paedophile rings they were investigating, that someone up high said, the investigation ends. This is how it works. And when you look, to bring up that name, Jimmy Savile, who was not just a record-breaking paedophile, he was a procurer of children for the rich and famous, which is why the establishment watched his back decade after decade, while police and others knew what he was doing. It's also worth asking how someone who the police and the security services knew was a record-breaking paedophile could be allowed to be so close to Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister, and so close, decade after decade after decade, to the British royal family. Answer that, and the lid really will come off. The world is not like we're told it is. Nothing like. And that's why there's an immediate ridicule and dismissal for people like me when we start talking about the world as it really is, beyond the illusion that we're sold throughout our lives. And so people like Mike Veal, the chief constable of Wiltshire Police, who not directly quoted, but quoted from a source within the investigation by these papers, is apparently determined to stand up and not be intimidated. And I hope that continues, because he's going to come across now tremendous pressure to stop this stuff coming out and the truth being made public. And if he stands by that commitment, which he appears to be doing at the moment, and good on him for that, then the public must stand by this guy and not let him go the way of others, like the genuine police who were investigating the revelations of the Jersey paedophile and child murder allegations, which, of course, involved who? Edward Heath and Jimmy Savile. When they were getting too close to the truth, they were dismissed. when a genuine investigator of the Belgian satanic child revelations was determined to seek the truth, whoever it involved, they got rid of him as well. So if Mike Veal stands up and says, I'm not bowing to pressure, the public must give him every support, because the world is not like we think it is. And we need to start getting rid of the naivety and realize that there are forces at work in this world that they don't want us to know about. But we're starting to know, and we must do what is necessary to allow this to come out.